So, it's been a while. I kinda got carried away enjoying the holidays too much, but well, back with another video with some more discussions. This time we're gonna talk about the two mommies of this game, the highly loved character Kafka and probably the most anticipated character Black Swan. With the Kafka rerun right around the corner and Black Swan probably after that, a lot of questions are floating around. Which one should you pull? Do you need both of them to be good? Are they even worth it? And also, there's one other issue about Black Swan that's going around lately, that she does not work with Kafka or something like that. So in this video, I want to touch on these topics and give my overall take on it. Of course, these are just my personal thoughts on these characters based on my personal testing and experience with them. So please keep in mind that I'm not forcing anyone to pull for some character. This is just a simple discussion on these two units to have you get a better picture of what they offer or if you should pull for them. So with that out of the way, I'm Sho and these are my thoughts on Kafka and Black Swan. So as usual, let's start with a bit of an overview of these two characters, just to get you guys up to speed. So starting with Kafka, she was our first 5-star limited character that solely focused on DOT playstyle. Unlike our other 5-star limited Nihility character Silverwolf, who was more of a damage support with her defense shred and other things, Kafka was surely one of the most hyped up character ever. She still holds the record for the best HSR character trailer, at least in my opinion. Heck, she was one of the first characters we ever see in game, so surely she had to be unique, and she was. Unlike any other DOT character like Sampo or Luca, Kafka doesn't just apply debuff that then deal damage at the start of the enemy's turn. She can detonate any and every DOT in her own turn with her skill. She's able to detonate any debuff, be that a wind shear, bleed, shock. She can detonate them all in her own turn, and then the enemy also takes damage in their own turn as well. So it's like 2 instances of damage. And trust me, if you have played Kafka, then you know how insane this ability is. And if you haven't played Kafka before, then you're probably underestimating it. Having such a skill makes her combine both DOT playstyle and a standard crit playstyle. To explain this better, let me ask you a question. In your opinion, what differentiates a DOT playstyle to a standard crit playstyle? You can pause the video and share your answer. I do always reply to every comment. In my opinion though, is the way the damage is dealt. You guys probably have heard of the terms like front-loaded and back-loaded damage, and I think of these two playstyles as these two terms. A front-loaded damage is when a character deals most of his damage up front in the start of the rotation, or in Star Rail's case, their turn. This is how a standard DPS character deals damage, and what most players like. They just love to see big damage numbers. On the other hand, a back-loaded damage is when a character deals most of their damage at the end of their rotation. This is how the DOT playstyle works. They deal most of their damage at the enemy's turn, and is probably the main issue why not many players like a DOT playstyle. They mostly finds it kinda boring and unpredictable, and it kinda is. You might just die before the enemy takes turn. Well, that's what a lot of players think anyway, and Kafka completely changes that. She allows the boring backloaded damage of a DOT playstyle to have a great front-loaded damage as well. With the detonation in her skill, she gets you those big numbers in her own turn, up front, combining the both playstyles. With her, now a DOT team has both front-loaded and back-loaded damage, which not only increases the overall damage by a lot, but also makes the playstyle way more fun. She herself fully enhances the DOT playstyle. This is what I mean when I say her skill is really insane. And not only that, she also has her own debuffs like shock, so she is not fully reliant on other characters to apply DOT, though that does helps greatly. She has massive AoE in her attacks like her ultimate and has follow-up attacks through her talent, so she's a complete package. She's also pretty easy to build, as all her debuffs have pretty high chance to proc, so you don't need that much effect hit rate on her. She has self-energy regeneration through her passives, which has become kind of necessary for characters who are not straight up hyper carries, so her kit is up to date. And since she is super unique, she is future proof as well. All these traits makes her a great character to have in your account. And also, if you are struggling with the new Sim Universe updates like the Storm Disaster or the newly added Golden Gears, then Nihility is one of, if not the best path to clear them in the hardest difficulty, at least in my opinion. So I think that's also something to add, as Star Rail will keep adding new stuff to the Sim Universe, much harder challenges, so having a kind of a cheat code which gives you a better chance to clear those content is always nice. Next, let's talk about Black Swan. I took too much time explaining Kafka, but well, she is kinda insane. Anyways, just like I said that Kafka enhances the normal DOT playstyle and adds somewhat of a front-loaded damage to it, Black Swan on the other hand just straight up increases the damage of the standard DOT playstyle, and she does that with a new unique debuff called Sacrament, which is kinda similar to the normal wind debuff like Wind Shear, as it also stacks like crazy, but has unusually high scaling than any other debuff, and she can apply this debuff through every part of her kit, her basic, her skill, ultimate, or talent, everything. She herself can stack this debuff really high to get considerable damage, but through more DOT characters on the team, this becomes even better. Her talent makes it so that if there are other dots present on the target, those dots will also inflict sacrament to that enemy. So like you get tons of sacrament procs every enemy turn. And also the more stacks of sacrament present on the enemy, the damage multiplier of sacrament will additionally increase. And on top of that, depending on the number of stacks, sacrament will have additional effects like hitting adjacent targets and ignoring defense and such. Speaking of which, her skill, which targets 3 enemies, also reduces enemy defense for 3 turns, which also enables her to be played as a standard damage support as someone like Pella or Silverwolf. Her ultimate has another effect called Epiphany, which increases the damage taken by the enemy in their own turn, which is the standard dot damage. So she can buff your general dot characters in her own way. She has a lot of AoE in her skill and ultimate, which allows her to stack more and more sacrament on the enemy. Of course, a full analysis or guide will be out right after the version livestream, so stay tuned for that. She also has self-buffing passives where she gets her damage increased based on her effect hit rate, so she's also self-sufficient. All this makes her another character with a full package. You don't miss out on anything. With her insane DOT application and damage support like defense down, she's a perfect and probably the best DOT character in the game. And I'm not comparing her to Kafka, as she is an enabler for the DOT teams, and Black Swan is someone similar to Sampo, but much better. She's definitely a character that you don't want to miss if you really love DOT playstyle, not to mention she's hot as hell. So yeah, they both are an upgrade to your standard DOT teams, but both of them take a different approach to do that. Kafka is like an enabler for any DOT team and enhances the overall playstyle, and Black Swan is the best DOT applicator for that standard playstyle. But which one is better? Do you need to have one to pull for the other? Are they even worth it? After a good briefing on their kit, let's start discussing their value. The first question that I want to tackle is, do Black Swan need Kafka or the other way around? Now in my opinion, absolutely not. They both are standalone characters that can benefit from each other, but by no means they need each other. From a simple mathematical perspective, a Black Swan Kafka team deals around 15 to 18% more damage than a Black Swan Sampo team, and a Kafka Black Swan team deals around 8 to 10% more damage than a Kafka Sampo team. So you can see here, the damage difference is not that big between Black Swan with Kafka and other options. And it's even less for Kafka. Sure, you do get a bit of overall damage increase, but it's not so significant that justifies a must pull. Black Swan and Kafka does have similar needs, as they want different dot characters in their teams, and the more there are, the more damage the team deals. And you literally use the same team comps as Kafka and just replace Kafka with Black Swan. It's similar to how Kafka and Ruan Mei synergy works. Kafka's best teams does require Ruan Mei, but you don't need Ruan Mei to play Kafka. And it's the same thing with Black Swan. I think that's much clearer now. The next thing I want to discuss is, are they even worth it? At this point, if you don't have a Kafka or haven't tried a DOT playstyle, should you give it a try? And I think you should. As a gacha game, the content will keep on changing with new challenges and game modes, and the best way to tackle that is by constantly expanding your roster and playstyles. Both Kafka and Black Swan unlocks that new DOT playstyle, and they are needed in my opinion. Like I said earlier, with the new changes in the sim universe and with pure fiction right around the corner, they became even more valuable. You want consistent AoE damage to deal with pure fiction, and DOT playstyle is usually fantastic for AoE. And since there is no turn limit, you can easily auto that without any worry. And for the new golden gears, I already mentioned that Nihility is one of the best paths to easily clear those high levels. In the history of turn-based gacha games, for most PvE content, if there is no turn limit, a DOT playstyle or a super tanky playstyle is always the best pick. Standard glass cannon hypercarry teams are not that popular there. Players prefer those teams in Star Rail because of the turn limit, but otherwise, standard hypercarry is not that popular. In terms of builds as well, it's pretty easy to build a dot team, and here I want to clear another misconception about building a dot team. Players think they are super resource heavy and is not worth it, and let me tell you, the only resource heavy stuff you need is level up materials like EXP books or trace level of stuff, because when it comes to relics, you pretty much just throw all your leftover gear with no crit stats and just some attack and speed, and you're good to go. Since DOS does not crit, you don't have to fish for crit stats. There's no RNG about not critting like your Zila ultimate, or not being able to get 70% crit rate to activate the Utility Arena passive. You just focus on the main stats, and you're good to go. Dot playstyle have stood the test of times, and are still competing in the highest floors of meta. Both Black Swan and Kafka are like pillars for that playstyle, and I think you should at least have all the playstyles covered, especially if you are an F2P and cannot hyper invest in characters like their Eidolon or Lightcones. In my opinion, they are definitely worth it. Alright, now the main question. Who is the better pick? Like we've discussed their value and saw that they are great on their own without needing the other. But which one should you get? Which one is going to give you most value? Is it the gun with sword combo red mommy, or is it the hardest card throwing purple mommy? Which one is better? And it's a really tough question. I already said that they both have similar roles of increasing the overall damage of a dot team, but they fulfill that role in different ways. Black Swan increases damage by adding more dots with high multiplier, defense shred, and damage boost. Kafka on the other hand improves damage by providing a much needed front load to the DOT playstyle. You can't go wrong with either of them. They both are great investments if you want to dip your toes in a new DOT playstyle. But if you can get only one, I recommend going for Kafka. She is a character that will provide much more value for a new player who is just starting to play DOT teams. Not just in terms of damage, but also in terms of fun. If you are someone who only plays the standard crit playstyle, even with the higher damage with Black Swan, you still might find that boring. You just want to see something similar to the playstyle you have been playing all this time. And Kafka can provide that. With her consistent front load, she combines both the DOT and crit playstyles. And if you're just starting something new, you should go for something that keeps you interested in that new stuff. And other factors as well, like who is more future-proof. Well, they both are pretty unique, so you won't see immediate power creep, but Black Swan being a better but the standard DOT character will see competition down the line. And someday we might just get a better DOT character of the same element. But she is unique enough to not have to worry about that for a long time. But Kafka is totally different. Her kit is so unique in what she does, and in such a way that even if another character with the same skill set arrives, they won't completely push away Kafka. They will just join Kafka and make her even better. And this just make her even more future-proof. And with all this in mind, I think Kafka should be your priority if you want to try the DOT playstyle. And of course, if you already have Kafka, then you don't really need this video. But for players like me who doesn't have Kafka, should aim for her first. So overall, I think I've explained everything properly, and of course me saying that Kafka is a better pull does not make Black Swan bad. Players are saying that she's just a better Sampo, but she provides much more than just win DOTs. She has damage boost, defense shred, and other things in her arsenal. She's not just a better sample. I just think as a first step for the damage over time gang, Kafka is the better option. And of course, there is also the fact that this is Kafka's rerun. We can always expect a character to rerun in 5 to 6 patches of their initial release. So even if you miss Black Swan now, she will come back eventually. But for their second rerun, God knows when that will happen. And with the speed of Hoyo releasing new characters, 2 in 1 patch, it might as well take another year to see Kafka again. So I highly recommend you get her now that you have the chance, or you might regret it later on missing out not just a damage boost for your DOT teams, but also that fun factor that elevates the dot team's boring backloaded damage. So well, that's going to be it. My overall thoughts on both Kafka and Black Swan. I hope you guys understood what I said and why I said it, and have a better idea of the overall values that these two characters bring.